There is a version of you that you have never met. Not the version who wakes up tired. Not the version who smiles in photos or agrees in meetings or says, "I'm fine," when they are not. Somewhere underneath all of that, there is a version of you that your own brain has decided you are not allowed to see. And the terrifying part? It's not hiding from the world. It's hiding from you. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will start questioning which version of yourself you actually are. For most of human history, we believed personality was simple. You are born a certain way. You grow. You become who you are. Fixed, solid, knowable. But in the last few decades, psychologists and neuroscientists started noticing something that didn't fit. People consistently described themselves in ways that contradicted how they actually behaved. Not occasionally, not by accident, constantly, predictably. Almost like there was a filter running in the background of the human mind, quietly editing the footage before it ever reached conscious awareness. At first, this looked like simple self-deception, harmless, forgivable. But then something strange happened. Researchers began testing this filter under controlled conditions, and the results didn't show a mind that occasionally lied to itself. They showed a mind that was built to lie to itself, not as a flaw, as a function. A survival mechanism running since childhood, older than your memories, older than your sense of self. Let that sink in for a moment. The parts of your personality you consider you, your kindness, your confidence, your calm, may not be the whole story. They may be the parts your brain decided were safe enough to let through. So, where does the rest go? To answer that, we have to go back to something almost nobody talks about. The moment your personality was still being built. Somewhere around early childhood, your brain was doing something remarkable. It was watching how people reacted to you. Every time you expressed anger and someone recoiled. Every time you cried and someone dismissed you. Every time you were too much or too sensitive or too weird, your brain was taking notes, and it made a decision, not consciously. You couldn't have chosen this even if you tried. Your brain concluded that certain parts of you were dangerous to reveal, not dangerous to the world, dangerous to your survival within your environment. Because to a child's brain, being rejected doesn't just feel bad, it feels fatal. So your mind did something ingenious and something quietly devastating. It didn't just hide those traits from other people, it hid them from you. This is where things start to unravel. Psychologists call this process the construction of the false self, a version of you engineered for approval, safety, and belonging. But here's the disturbing twist almost nobody mentions. The false self doesn't feel false. It feels completely real. It feels like your personality, your preferences, your values, your identity. Because your brain didn't build a mask, it built a person. And you've been living as that person for so long, you forgot there was ever another one underneath. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part is this. The traits your brain hid weren't random. They weren't ugly or evil or shameful in any objective sense. Often, they were the most powerful, most authentic, most alive parts of you. Your raw anger, which might have actually been boundaries. Your intense emotions, which might have actually been depth. Your strange, unfiltered thoughts, which might have actually been creativity. Your brain didn't erase your worst qualities. It erased the parts of you too big for the room you grew up in. And here is where the psychology becomes almost unbearable to sit with. Because if your brain can hide entire pieces of your personality from your own awareness, how would you ever know? You wouldn't feel an absence. There would be no warning sign, no internal alarm saying this part of you is missing. Instead, you would simply live your life believing you are naturally calm, naturally agreeable, naturally easygoing, never realizing that natural might actually mean permitted. This is the part that should unsettle you. Because right now, as you're watching this, some part of your real personality might be running quietly in the background of your mind, never expressed, never explored, never even noticed, simply because decades ago expressing it once felt unsafe, and your brain remembered forever. But here's where the story gets even stranger, because this hidden self doesn't just sit there passively, waiting to be discovered. It leaks. Psychologists have observed this leakage in the strangest places, in dreams that feel disturbingly out of character, in sudden outbursts that shock the people around you, and shock you even more, in moments of extreme stress, extreme love, extreme exhaustion, when the mental filter finally slips, and for a few terrifying seconds, you catch a glimpse of someone else wearing your face, and then, just as quickly, the filter reasserts itself. You apologize, you explain it away. That wasn't really me. But what if it was the only time it actually was? This is where the deeper implication starts to surface, because this isn't just a story about hidden personality traits. It's a story about identity itself. We like to believe the self is something we discover, like a fixed truth waiting patiently to be found. But what if the self is something closer to a negotiation? A constant, invisible bargaining between who you actually are and who it was safe to become. If that's true, then your personality was never fully yours to begin with. It was co-authored by fear, by approval, by every room you ever had to shrink yourself to fit into. And this is where the psychological horror deepens. Because if your brain can hide your personality from you once, it can do it again. Every time you enter a new environment, every time you meet new people, every time survival, social, emotional, professional, feels slightly at risk, your mind will quietly renegotiate who you're allowed to be, which means the you at work might be a stranger to the you at home. The you online might be a stranger to the you alone at 2 a.m. Not because you're fake, because you're protected. But protection has a cost. Because a self that is constantly hidden doesn't just stay hidden forever. Eventually, in silence, in solitude, in the quiet moments right before sleep, it asks a question that refuses to go away. Who am I when no one is watching to be afraid of? And this is where we have to zoom out. Because this isn't really about personality psychology anymore. It's about all of us. Every human being alive is walking around with an edited version of themselves, approved, adjusted, softened just enough to survive whatever world raised them. We call it personality, but maybe it's closer to a survival document, a quiet agreement we made before we were even old enough to understand what we were agreeing to. And the truly haunting question isn't, what is my real personality? It's this: if you finally met your unfiltered self, the one your brain has been hiding since childhood, would you even recognize them? Would you like them? Or would you instinctively reach for the mask again because some part of you still believes it isn't safe to be fully seen? Maybe growth isn't about becoming someone new. Maybe it's about finally being brave enough to meet who you already were. Because somewhere inside you, right now, there is a self still waiting, still hidden, still real. And the most unsettling truth of all is this: you've spent your entire life protecting yourself from someone who was never the danger. They were the only one who was ever truly you.